My name is Bobby. My friend Tom and I were always into exploring the unknown. So when rumors spread about an abandoned asylum on the outskirts of our town, we couldn't resist the urge to investigate. People told stories about patients gone mad, experimental treatments, and unexplained disappearances before the place had been shut down in the mid-90s. The asylum loomed like a shadow in our minds, just a dark space. We wanted to uncover some truth, or at least investigate the unknown. One afternoon, we biked out there to check it out for ourselves, instead of listening to all the chatter about the place. The asylum stood just ahead, an imposing structure. It was dark. It stood as a relic of forgotten horrors, windows boarded up, graffiti marring its walls, and ivy clawing its way across the building. We knew we were about to venture into a strange place. Stepping through the rusted gates, an eerie hush surrounded us. The air was thick and warm. The building was just before us, so in we went. Inside, the darkness was harsh, swallowing our flashlight beams as we navigated the crumbling corridors. Every footstep echoed. It was so quiet in here. The musty stench of decay clung to the air, and the silence was deafening, broken only by our cautious movements. As we ventured deeper, old rooms told tales of lost sanity. Overturned beds, rusted restraints, and scattered patient records painted a haunting picture. It felt as though the walls held stories that begged to be heard, a history of suffering surrounding us. As we ventured deeper into the asylum, the air thickened and the silence lingered. Our footsteps echoed through the empty halls, each creak of the floorboards giving me goosebumps. Dust-covered windows let in faint rays of light. We found a room cluttered with an old desk and several chairs. We figured it must have been an office, its walls lined with shelves of old records. Faded photographs adorned the files, capturing haunting glimpses of patients' troubled pasts. We hesitantly flipped through the brittle pages, uncovering tales of suffering and anguish, each documented case revealing a new layer of despair. Amidst the records, one file stood out. Yellowed with age, it held images that were worse than previous pages. A patient, contorted and disfigured, his eyes a haunting echo of unimaginable torment. His condition seemed to transcend human comprehension. Reading through the notes, I got a severe chill. The patient, admitted in the late 60s, was once a murderer, infamous for the brutal slaying of his own family. The detailed accounts chronicled his descent into madness, delusions, and the monstrous acts that led to his institutionalization. The images in the file were nothing short of a nightmare. As Tom and I exchanged frightened glances, a loud slam reverberated down the hallway outside the office, shattering the previous silence. Fear constricted our chests, our minds racing. The noise seemed too deliberate to be a coincidence, sending a message that we were not alone within these walls. Nerves on edge, Tom peeked outside the room we had been checking out, but there was nothing out of sorts. In the suffocating gloom of the asylum, Tom's insistence on exploring further clashed with my growing unease. He brushed off my concerns, teasingly suggesting that I was getting spooked. But the sinister air of the place was getting under my skin. I struggled to just shake it off. As we pressed on further into the building, rounding a corner, an abrupt, eerie silence fell between us. The atmosphere thickened with a fresh sense of anxiety. Frozen in our tracks, we locked eyes, trying to breathe quietly. At the end of the hallway stood a nasty figure, hunched and contorted, a grotesque human form. It was as though the horrors from the file had materialized before us, yet far worse than the images we had seen. This thing was larger, more twisted, its contorted frame a nightmare in the real world. I felt a chill yet again, a horrifying realization dawning on us. This being bore a haunting resemblance to the deranged patient from the records, only far more distorted and monstrous. Our breaths hitched as our minds struggled to comprehend the scene before us. The creature was hunched over, gnawing on the remains of a squirrel or some unfortunate small creature. A new level of fear was achieved as I was rooted in place. I tried not to make a sound as Tom's hand gripped my arm, his eyes wide with terror. The stale air seemed to grow colder, thick with a sense of impending doom. Fear coursed through us both, every instinct urging us to run, to escape this thing. But we didn't dare move, paralyzed by fear of it noticing us. Whatever was down the hall was now very real, and not just on paper. We had to find a way out. Tom and I silently agreed to step back, retrace our path, and leave before the creature noticed us. Slowly, we shuffled backward, trying not to make a sound. But then, a piece of broken glass crunched under Tom's shoe. It was like that noise broke some invisible barrier between us and the creepy thing down the hall. The creature whipped its head in our direction, and that's when we saw its twisted face, like nothing I've ever seen. Everything felt frozen, but the second that glass broke, the monster started charging toward us, screeching like nothing I'd ever heard. We took off, pumping our legs as fast as we could. I didn't know I could run that fast. The sounds of our footsteps were terrifying, almost as scary as that thing's screams. As we scrambled through the asylum's dim corridors, the sounds of our racing footsteps mixed with the creature's growls, making it feel like we were trapped in a horror movie. Panic set in, and our frantic pace made us lose track of where we were going. The darkness didn't help, turning everyday stuff into creepy shapes. We made turns left and right, hoping one of them would lead us to safety, but each one just led to another hallway. Finally, we ran straight into a pair of heavy double doors, locked tight with chains. It was a real nightmare. The creature's howls grew louder, closing in on us. We had no way out from here. It was only a few feet from us at this point, no longer running, but almost surveying. It lunged for Tom, sinking its teeth into his leg. I grabbed a piece of glass from the floor and stabbed the creature, and it let go of Tom for a moment. Then we spotted a window in a nearby room. We threw whatever we could find at it, breaking the glass. Injuries out of mind, we jumped out and ran into the night, the darkness feeling safer than that place. I felt like I could just drop dead at that moment, how fast my heart was beating. But seeing our car in the distance gave us hope, and we sprinted towards it. But then, I realized my hand was bleeding badly from where I'd cut it with the glass. We had made it out, at least. We rushed to the hospital, telling them some made-up story about a stray dog attacking us. We didn't want anyone to know what had really happened. Even at the hospital, I couldn't shake off the fear. The memory of that creature, twisted and dark, still gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. That night was a sleepless one. Every time I closed my eyes, that contorted creature flashed back. Its growls echoed in my mind, making it impossible to shake off the feeling of dread. The image of it, hunched over how it was, seemed burned into my memory. The next morning, as I met Tom on our walk to school, we exchanged worried glances. Neither of us wanted to speak about what had happened, but the unease lingered between us. It was Tom who finally broke the silence, suggesting we should change our names, write it all down, and get it out there. Share the experience, warn others, and hopefully find closure. So we did just that. With different names and a deep breath, we recounted our nightmarish experience. The story went out, and for a while it felt like a weight lifted off our shoulders. My name isn't Bobby, and I don't know anyone named Tom, but we had that experience. But even now, years later, I can't help but glance over my shoulder in the dark, haunted by the memory of that asylum and the creature lurking within. Some secrets are best left untold, yet sometimes sharing them is the only way to cope.